It's the International Soccer Preview. We are Soccer Files Canada. Welcome to Series 25, looking at the players of Euro 2024. This episode is looking at the players of Croatia. Here we go. Hello and welcome to the International Soccer Preview by Soccer Files Canada. I'm Kevin and this is Series 25 on the players of the 2024 Euro Cup. This episode covers Croatia's players. We're doing this mediacast in two parts. Part one is a look at the candidates for the squad and their likelihood of making it. We examine the participation of players in games over the recent period and categorize them according to their likelihood of making the final squad. Part two will come out when the squad lists are released and the final squad is known. At that time, we'll go back over our list and see who made it and who didn't. We'll also cover things like injuries and surprise selections. So this episode, part one, will have three parts. In section one, we look at some general information on the team. Section two is the main part. We cover the main candidates in each position and their likelihood of making the final squad. And in section three, we summarize and have some concluding business. Let's begin then. You can see if you're watching the YouTube feed that I still don't have my Croatia shirt, but my brother right now, even as we speak, is in Croatia, and I've asked him to bring me back a shirt. So I might have one for the part two when the final squad comes out. So I just have red and white is as close as I can get. But I do want to show that I am a bit closer with my slippers, and I hope that that made it on screen. My slippers, even though they're not quite right either. Okay, let's go to section one and have some comments on the squad in general. So we begin with major retirements, and we only have one here. It's, oh no, we have a couple. Dejan Lovren, the central defender who was with the team from 2009 to 22, and he had 78 caps and 5 goals in that time. He had been with the team since for the Euro 2012, he was selected for the preliminary squad, but didn't make the final cut. But from 2014 World Cup all the way to the 2022 World Cup, he was on the squad. He announced his retirement in February 2023 and last appeared in the 2002 World Cup. The other bit of an interesting case is Marko Livaja, and he is, 31 years old and had been with Croatia just since 2018 to 2022 with 21 caps and 4 goals. And he's still playing for the club at the club level, and he was he was on the squad for the World Cup in 2022. What happened with him is a bit controversial. He abruptly announced his retirement in October 2023, kind of amidst controversy. I didn't quite get it, even though I tried to follow it. He was a bit of a controversial figure anyway, and there was a controversy with a fan at a training session. So his volatility had caused him to be left out of the team, but he had been invited back by the manager. He last appeared in March 2023, so he does come up below. But anyway, Marko Livaja officially retired from the team, but actually young enough to maybe come back. Let's look at club affiliations for the squad. And they do have some major players, so I'll touch on those. They have 2 playing for Manchester City. That's Gvardiol and Kovacic. That's a big club. Also, Luka Modric for Real Madrid, and Josip Stanisic for Bayer Leverkusen. Not quite as big as the clubs I mentioned. And then most of the players actually play outside of Croatia. but with first division clubs in the various countries. So we have a player for Lyon in France, and Rangers in Scotland, and Atalanta, actually several of them playing in Italy. Outside of Europe, we have Brozovic with Al Nassr in Saudi Arabia, who seems to be gathering the stars. And we have one player in America playing for FC Dallas. That's a forward, Pitar Musa, probably a little less known player. So good quality of club affiliations there. And we move on to talk about the recent games. So we're examining the participation of players from after the previous World Cup in December of 2022. Croatia played 12 games over that period. We're also going to look at the players in the World Cup as part of our discussion. But as far as the history of the players goes, we're going to try to reduce it a little bit so as to make the podcast a bit more efficient. So as far as history goes for clubs, we're only going to go back one or two clubs that the player has played on most recently. And as far as tournaments go, we'll go back a couple of tournaments. Croatia was part of the 2020 Euro Cup and the 2022 World Cup. So we'll tell you whether they were part of the squads for those teams. Okay, let's move on to formations here. And Croatia, very steady, not only in its formations, but also in the players stationed in the positions, except for two positions up front, where there's a lot of changeability. In the World Cup, they went with a 4-3-3 in 6 of the first 7 games. And then in the 7th game, which was the third place match, which teams usually kind of enjoy rather than be competitive with, they changed to a 4-2-3-1. And we see that in the formations since the World Cup. It has been predominantly a 4-3-3 formation in 8 of the 12 games, but in 4 of the 12, so a little more than in the World Cup, they used a 4-2-3-1. So overall, that is the 4-3-3 formation 80% of the time. 80% of the time if we include the World Cup games. And sorry, I had my graphics a little wrong here, so I'm just fixing them up. 4-3-3, 80% of the time, and a 4-2-1-3, 20% of the time. So there we have it. And finally, our last order of business is to look at their upcoming games. So they do have 2 friendlies to play before the tournament. And the first one is on June 3rd at home to North Macedonia. And the second one on June 8th away in Portugal. So if you're following this, you can kind of keep an eye on those games to see how consistent the lineups are with what we present here, whatever changes they make and so on. Okay, now let's get down to our main order of business, looking at the candidates. We begin with manager Zlatko Dalic. He is Croatian, and he has been manager of the Croatian team since 2017, so a very successful run with Croatia, and manager since the 2018 World Cup and the 2 tournaments since. All right, let's go to goalkeepers, and we'll present the candidates by name and their likelihood first. Perhaps we'll dispense with some of the less likely ones as we do this. For goalkeepers, we have definite candidate Dominik Livakovic. We have 2 likely candidates, Ivica Ivusic and Nedeljko Labrovic. And we have a possible candidate in Dominik Kotarski. And finally, a player who seems to be off the squad, Ivo Grbic, He last appeared for the national team in March of 2023, so doesn't look like a likely or a viable candidate here. Let's go back and look at the more likely ones. Dominik Livakovic is 29 years old, and he's been with Croatia since 2017 and has 52 caps and no goals. So he was the starting keeper in both of the recent tournaments. That's Euro 2020 and World Cup 2022. And since then has started 11 of their 12 games and was on the bench for the last match there. So Dominik Livakovic seems to be remain the starting keeper. So we're looking more at backups with the following candidates. The first is Ivica Ivusic, the likely candidate, and he has been with the, he is 29 years old. He's been with the team since 2021, but only 6 caps there. Livakovic having played most of the games, and he plays for Paphos in Cyprus. I forgot to mention Livakovic plays for Fenerbahce in Turkey. Back to Ivusic, he was part of the World Cup 2022 squad, a backup keeper. He hadn't started any of the 12 games since the World Cup, but was subbed in for 1 and on the bench for 10. That must be 9. On the bench for 9 and not selected for the first 2 matches. There. So Ivica Ivusic looking a likely candidate here. And we also have Nedeljko Labrovic as a likely candidate. He's brand new to the team, 24 years old, but he got his first cap in 2024. Just 1 cap there, so not part of the squad. He was actually on the preliminary squad for the World Cup in 2022, but not selected. He returned after a 9-month absence in March of 2023 and started 1 of their remaining 12 games and was on the bench for all 11 others. So Labrovic, a likely candidate here. Our last one is Dominik Kotarski, and he's 24 years old. He also got his first cap in 2024 here. So 1 cap for him. He plays for PAOK in Greece. And I forgot to say again, Labrovic plays for Rijeka in Croatia. Anyway, Kotarski also selected for the preliminary squad for the 2022 World Cup, but didn't make it. He got his first appearance just recently in March 2024. Didn't start either of the remaining 2 games, but was subbed in for 1. So he got a half a game in there, and he was on the bench for the other. And I'll just talk about Ivo Grbic and say that he was the backup keeper for the 2022 World Cup, but as we said, seems to be off the squad now. Let's summarize the position of goalkeeper then. So Livakovic started all 7 games of the World Cup, and as we saw, 11 of the 12 games since. Each of the other keepers here, Ivusic, Labrovic, and Kotarski, saw a half of a game over the last 2 matches, so they each got 45 minutes. Croatia may bring 4 keepers to the tournaments, as they did in the last games there in March, but it is hard to tell the pecking order among the backup keepers. So Livakovic the starter, and any one of the 3 really have a bit of a bid as backup keeper. Okay, let's move on to the defense, and we begin with central defenders, and we'll name the candidates. We have Josko Gvardiol, a definite candidate, as well as Josip Sutalo. 2 likely candidates in Martin Ehrlich and Domagoj Vida. And 2 possible candidates with Marin Pongracic, and Duje Kaleta-Kar coming back into the squad. And we have, of course, Dejan Lovren, now retired, as we mentioned at the beginning, or in section 1 of the mediacast. And we have Philip. No, I'm not going to mention him because he's too far off the squad. Let's go back and look at the candidates here. So again, a 4-3-3 or a 4-2-3-1, always going to be two central defenders here. Josko Gvardiol is 22 years old and has been with Croatia since 2021 with 29 caps and 2 goals. So his good performance in the World Cup, where he was wearing a mask, earned him a spot with Manchester City in England since 2023. He was with Leipzig in Germany before that. He was a starter both in Euro 2020 and in the World Cup in 2022, and has since started 10 of their 12 games, and he was injured for the 2 others. So Josko Gvardiol, a definite candidate. Next, we have Josip Sutalo, also definite. He's 24 years old and has been with Croatia since 2022 with 13 caps and no goals. He plays for Ajax in the Netherlands, and he was part of the World Cup 2022 squad just as a substitute there. However, he's since taken on a starting role, starting 9 of the 12 games since the World Cup. He was on the bench for 1 and injured for the last 2 matches, but he has since returned to action. So Josip Sutalo, a definite candidate. Next, the likely candidates, Martin Ehrlich, 26 years old and been with Croatia since 2022. So you can see they are kind of refreshing their squad over the past couple of years. Ehrlich has 8 caps and no goals and plays for Sassuolo in Italy since 2021. That's actually his second stint with them. He was also selected for the 2022 World Cup squad, and he has since started 3 of their 12 games, subbing in for 1 and on the bench for the 8 others. So always selected, Martin Ehrlich, but not starting many games. Our other likely candidate is Domagoj Vida, and he's a veteran with the team. He's 35 years old, so getting up there in age. Has been with Croatia since 2010 with 104 caps and 4 goals. He plays for AEK Athens in Greece since 2022 and Besiktas in Turkey prior to that. Been on the team since the Euro 12, the Euro Cup in 2012, and was part of the last 2 tournaments there. A starter in Euro 2020, but just on the bench in the 2022 World Cup. And like Ehrlich, he has started 3 of their 12 games since the World Cup, subbed in for 1 and on the bench for 7, just 1 match that he wasn't selected for. So both of those regularly selected, and that's why they're likely candidates. Next, we have the first of our possible candidates, Marin Pograšić. He's a new, wait a minute, what am I talking about? He's 26 years old and has been with the team since 2020. I guess I consider him new because he only has 6 caps and has never been involved in a tournament before. That's why his name, by the way, for YouTube watchers, is in light gray, because he has no tournament experience. He returned after a 17-month absence in November 2023 and started one of the last he started the last of their 4 remaining games and was on the bench for 3 others. So you can see why I'm viewing him as a new player. Anyway, Marin Pograšić, a possible candidate, and Duje Kaleta-Kar, 27 years old, has been with Croatia since 2018 with 23 caps and 1 goal. He is on the roster at Southampton in England since 2022, but actually has been loaned to Lyon in France since 2023. And prior to that, he was with Marseille in France for 4 years until 2022. Part of the Euro Cup in 2022, but not part of the World Cup. Sorry, part of the Euro Cup in 2020, not part of the 2022 World Cup squad. He was off the squad for a while and returned after an 18-month absence in March of 2024 and didn't start either of their remaining 2 games, but he was subbed in for one and on the bench for the other. So Duje Carleta-Carr making a bit of a comeback here. And that is 6 central defenders for 2 positions. So let's summarize the position. It was the retired Lovren and Gavardiol in all 7 games of the Cup, except in the last match, Lovren was replaced by Sutalo, kind of a foreshadowing of what was to happen afterwards, because it was Gavardiol and Sutalo as the main pairing in the games after the Cup. Now, each of those players did miss a few games. Gavardiol actually sometimes moved to left back, as we'll see towards the end of the period. And so Ehrlich and Vida are both of our likely candidates. Each got 3 starts in central defense. And Pongracic started in the last game, which was a friendly match. Okay, let's move on to the left backs. And we don't have any definite candidates here, but we have a likely candidate in Borna Sosa. And we'll go through the names here first. And we have a possible candidate in Borna Barisic. Finally, we have a player who seems to be off the squad. No, he's not a consideration. He didn't play since 2021. I won't mention him. Let's look at these 2 candidates then. Borna Sosa is 26 years old, and he's been with Croatia since 2021 with 19 caps and 1 goal. And he's with Ajax in the Netherlands. He was with Stuttgart in Germany from 2018 to 2023. He looks like he was on the preliminary squad for the 2018 World Cup, but doesn't seem to have been a consideration for the 2020 Euro Cup. However, he was a starter in World Cup 2022, and he has since started 4 of their games, subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 6 others. So, as I say, a starter in most of the World Cup games there, not so much of a starter since. The other candidate is Borna Barisic, and he is 31 years old. He's been with Croatia since 2017 with 35 caps and 1 goal. And he was part of both of the previous 2 tournaments as a substitute. And since the World Cup has started 4 of their 12 games, just like Sosa, subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 2. However, we have him as a possible candidate because he was not selected for the last 4 matches. So Borna Barisic, a possible candidate. Let's look at the position of left back. And it always is a left back position because it's the 4-3-3 or the 4-2-1-3. So always a defensive position. And it was Sosa, as we said, in 5 of the 7 games of the World Cup. Barisic came in for 1 game, and Ivan Perisic, coded as a left midfielder, also started 1 game. After the Cup, these 3 rotated evenly, but eventually Perisic dropped out, and the central defender Gavardiol came in to play as a left back. So over the last 4 games, it was Sosa twice and Gavardiol twice. Okay, let's go to right backs, and we have 2 definite candidates here. The first is Josip Stanisic, and the other Josip Juranovic. So kind of funny that the first name of both left backs and right backs is the same. Josip Stanisic is 24 years old and has been with the team since 2021 with 17 caps and no goals. He was born in Germany and has played for German clubs. He's with Bayern Munich in Germany since 2021. But the reason I didn't mention, or that The reason that wasn't mentioned in section 1 is that he's currently with Bayer Leverkusen on loan since 2023. And I should say that some of those loans are probably over at the end of the season here, but I think it's better just to say they're on loan here. Okay, Stanisic was part of the squad for the World Cup 2022 as a substitute, and since then he has started 6 of their 12 games, subbed in for 3 and on the bench for 3, so always called up, which is why we think he's a definite candidate to be on the roster. Next, Josip Juranovic is 28 years old. He's been with Croatia since 2017, so longer than Stanisic, and he has 36 caps and no goals. He plays for Union Berlin in Germany since 2023 and was with Celtic in Scotland for 2 years prior to that. Selected for both of the previous tournaments, and he has since started 6 of their 12 games and subbed in for 3, on the bench for 2 and injured for 1 other. So always called up when he is available to be called up. Those are the only 2 candidates there for right back. So let's summarize the position. It was Juranovic in the first 6 games of the Cup, and Stanisic coming in for game 7. That was the 3rd place match there. Juranovic continued to dominate the position after the Cup, but Stanisic came in increasingly and actually played 3 of the last 4 games. So we would say the position seems to be rotated between the 2 players at this point, and we don't necessarily think that Stanisic starting the next 2 is a strong bid for him being the starter here. Okay, let's go on to the defensive midfield. And yeah, we're going to do this a little bit differently than other mediacasts because of the 4-3-3 formation. So often teams are not using the right and left midfield roles, but Croatia uses it, as we saw, in 80% of the games over the past while. So we're going to kind of recode some players just to make the discussion more clear. So, for example, we have Mateo Kovacic. He's coded as a defensive midfielder, but we're going to move him to left midfield because that's where he plays. So if some of the positions are off here, we're going more on where they've played over the last while than on what their coding is, which differs sometimes from website to website anyway. So for defensive midfielders, then we only have a candidate at the possible but unlikely level. That's Nicola Moro. And he returned after a 19-month absence in October 2023 and was on the bench for 4 games and then not selected for the last 2 matches. So an outside chance of coming in, but we consider him unlikely. And we also have Christian Jasic. He was part of the World Cup squad in 2022 as a substitute, but he hasn't played since then. So we think Christian Jakic is off the team. Of course, we will be wrong in a couple of these predictions, so we will update in part 2 if he is selected for the squad. Let's move on to let's move on to central midfielders, and then we'll summarize both positions at once. So again, Luka Modric is coded as a central midfielder, but we've moved him to right midfield. So we begin with Marcelo Brozovic as a definite candidate, and we have Luka Sucic as a possible candidate here. And Mario Pasalic is also a central midfielder, but we've moved him to the attacking midfield here. So let's deal with these 2 candidates. Marcelo Brozovic is 31 years old, been with Croatia since 2014 with 95 caps and 7 goals. He has moved to Al Nasser in Saudi Arabia since 2023, having been with Inter Milan in Italy from 2015 to 23. Been part of squad since World Cup 2014, including the last two tournaments, and he started all 12 of their games since the 2022 World Cup. So Marcelo Brozovic, of course, then a definite candidate. Luka Susic is 21 years old, so quite young, been with Croatia since 2021 and has 5 caps and no goals. He plays for Red Bull Salzburg in Austria, and he was selected for the 2022 World Cup squad, but he saw no action there, on the bench for the whole time. And in fact started none of their games since the 2022 World Cup, but he was subbed in for one. But then out 2 separate times with knee problems for 8 of the matches. That includes the last 2 matches. He was also ill and with the under-21 team. So he was out for 6 games for knee surgery, and then 6 months later seemed to injure the knee again. However, he has recovered and has been playing since late March. But with all of those missed games, we have to consider him just a possible candidate here. Okay, now we can summarize the position. So this is kind of a central midfielder, right in the middle of the 4-3-3, right in the center. And it is in the World Cup. Whoops, I'm looking at the wrong description there. So, and I should say that in the 4-2-1-3, it is two players in the position with no right and left midfielders. Anyway, in the cup, it was a 4-3-3 for the first 6 games, and Brozovic was the man in that position. And in game 7, when it was 2 of them, it was Modric and Kovacic playing as defensive midfielders. After the cup, that continued. It was Brozovic for all of the 4-3-3 games. When it was 2, it was Modric and Brozovic together. In the last game, a bit of a switch up with Modric playing in the middle, Brozovic playing as a left midfielder, and we'll tell you right away who the right midfielder was in that last game. Okay, so Brozovic, the main man there, and Luka Modric is a main man because we're going to see that he was playing as a right midfielder for most of the games. Anyway, before we do that, we'll move on to left midfielders. So this is the 4-3-3, the middle 3 on the left side. And for candidates, we have Mateo Kovacic, who we moved from defensive midfielder to here. And Kovacic is a likely candidate. And that's all we have. We actually have Ivan Perisic as a left midfielder, but we're going to talk about him when we discuss left-sided attackers. So Mateo Kovacic is 30 years old and has been with the team since 2013, 99 caps now and 5 goals. And he plays for Manchester City in England since 2023 and was with Chelsea and Real Madrid, each team for 4 years before that. Kovacic was part of squads since the 2014 World Cup, including the last 2 squads, always been or a starter in those 2 tournaments. And since the World Cup in 2022, he's started 7 of their 12 games, subbed in for 1, on the bench for 2, and not selected for 2. So we do have him as a likely candidate there. We actually will summarize the position then. So in the 4-3-3, Kovacic, the defensive midfielder, played as a left midfielder. We saw that he accompanied Brozovic as a defensive midfielder when it was the 4-2-3-1 in the last World Cup game. He continued in the left midfield role for most of the period after the World Cup, was once replaced by attacking midfielder Ivan Usic. When it was the 4-2-1-3 formation, he either stepped out, but in one case played as an attacking midfielder. And that 4-2-3-1 formation happened more in the second half of the period, where he missed 4 of the 8 games. Okay, over to the right midfield. We promised that this is where we'd introduce Luka Modric, and indeed we are. He's the captain of the team. We have him as a likely candidate. Croatian fans will get mad at me for this, but he's 38 years old. Of course, if he's playing up until now, then he's going to play in the cup, but 38-year-old player, we think there is a possibility of him not coming to the cup. He's the captain of the team, though, and he has been with the team since 2006. A stunning 174 caps and 24 goals, and he's been with Real Madrid in Spain since 2012. So part of squads ever since the 2006 World Cup, where he subbed into a couple of games and has been on all squads since. Was captain from the 2018 World Cup onwards, and of course part of the squads in the last 2 cups. And he started all 12 of their games since the World Cup, so another reason why I should be slapped in the head for saying he's a likely candidate and not a definite one. He's the only one in this position here, so let's summarize. Again, he's coded, Luka Modric is coded as a central midfielder, but in all but the last game, he's played as a right midfielder. In the World Cup, he was rested in the 7th game when they switched to a 4-2-3-1, so he didn't play that. But he continued in the role of right midfielder, and only once in the last game became a central midfielder. Sorry, I'm wrong there. He was a right midfielder in all of the games where they played a 4-3-3. And became a defensive midfielder when they switched to a 4-2-3-1. And then only in the last game did it change. It was a 4-3-3, and he was in the center there. It was Brozovic moving to the left, and attacking midfielder Vlasic played as the right midfielder in the last game. Okay. I don't think there was as much suspense on that as I hoped for, but, you know, we do what we can. Okay, we move upfield, and we've reorganized things a little bit. We've created the attacking midfielder role. So that is going to be, well, for Croatia, a left forward in the 4-3-3 formation, or left attacking midfielder in the 4-2-3-1. So we have Luka Ivanusic. He is actually coded as an attacking midfielder. As a likely candidate, Ivan Perisic as a possible candidate, and Josip Brekalo as a possible candidate also. We have also, one more possible candidate, Marko Pjaka. And then we have a player who seems to be off the squad, Mislav Orsic, who last played for the team in March of 2023. So even though he was on the squad for the previous 2 tournaments, now seems to be off it. So let's look at the more likely candidates here, beginning with the one we consider likely, Luka Ivanusic. And he's 25 years old and has been with Croatia since 2017 and has 19 caps and 2 goals. Ivanusic plays for Feyenoord in the Netherlands since 2023 and was at home with Dynamo Zagreb before that. He was selected for the Euro Cup in 2020, but not for the not for the World Cup in 2022. He didn't make the final cut there. So since then, he returned after a 9-month absence immediately after the Cup in March 2023 and started 7 of the remaining 12 games and was otherwise always selected except for 2 games where he was injured. So we have him as a likely candidate, Luka Ivanušić, and our first possible candidate, Ivan Perisic, coded as a left midfielder, but we've moved him to a more attacking part of the presentation here. Perisic is 35 years old, been with Croatia since 2011, and has 129 caps and 33 goals. So one of the players we kind of have been expecting to retire. And he actually seems a bit closer to the end than Luka Modric does at this point, even though Modric is older. Perisic is on the roster for Tottenham in England since 2022, but in fact he was loaned to Hajduk Split in Croatia since 2024. Prior to Tottenham, he was with Inter Milan in Italy for 7 years. Perisic has been part of squad since the Euro 2012 and was a starter in each of the last 2 tournaments. And since then, though, he started the first 6 games after the World Cup, but then he was injured for the next 4 and not selected for the last 2 matches. So that's why we have Perisic as just a possible candidate. The next one is Josip Brekalo, 25 years old, with Croatia since 2018, 35 caps and 4 goals, playing for Fiorentina in Italy. He too, though, has been loaned to Hajduk Split in Croatia since 2024. And prior to Fiorentina, he played for Wolfsburg in Germany from 2016 to 2023. He was selected for the Euro 2020 squad, but not for the World Cup in 2022. So he returned after a 16-month absence in October 2023 and started 2 of their remaining 6 games, but was not selected for the last 4 matches. So Josip Brekalo, even maybe a little bit below the possible level, but not quite unlikely. Finally, we have Marko Pjaka, and he's coded actually as a right winger, but we're talking about him here because he's played on the left more in the period we're talking about. Pjaka is 29 years old and been with Croatia since 2014 with 24 caps and 1 goal. He plays for Rijeka in Croatia now since 2023, but he was with Juventus from 2016 to 2023, although he was loaned out quite a bit there. Pjaka has been with teams since Euro 2016, but was actually not selected for Euro 2020 or for the World Cup in 2022. And he returned after a 5-year absence. In fact, exactly 5 years. He returned in November 2023 and started 1 of their 4 remaining games and was on the bench for 2 and not selected for 1. But the one that he did start was their last game in March. A bit of an experimental game, so perhaps just trying him out. Nevertheless, because of that, we have to put him at the possible level here. So 3 possible candidates there and 1 likely in Ivanušić. Let's summarize the position. So in the 4-3-3 formation, the position is left forward, and in a 4-2-3-1, a left attacking midfielder. In the cup, it was Ivan Perisic for the first 6 games, and then Oršić stepped in the last game. Oršić, who is now seemingly off the squad. Perisic continued in the role after the cup, but was replaced by Ivanušić a couple of times early on. Halfway through, as we saw, Perisic got injured, and it was Brekalo who replaced him for the first 2 games, and then Ivanušić for the next 3. In the final game, Pjaka started in the position. So Perisic, who had really been the man in the 2022 World Cup, even though he was recovered by March of 2024, was not selected, so didn't return to the position. So it looks like some changes are afoot on the left attacking side of the field. Let's go to the right attacking side. And here we have Mario Pasalic. He's coded as a central midfielder, but we're moving him to the right attacking position here. Mario Pasalic is a definite candidate here. And I should say that watchers shouldn't confuse him with Marco Pasalic, very similar name there. But Marco Pasalic has never started a game for the Cup. I think we meet him, we'll meet him actually in this list as well. The other definite candidate is Lovro Mayer. And then Marco Piaca is a right winger, but we talked about him on the left. And here is Marco Pasalic, a possible candidate. Let's go through them. We'll go back to Mario Pasalic, who is 29 years old and has been with Croatia since 2014 with 62 caps and 10 goals. He's been with Atalanta in Italy since 2020. He was actually with Chelsea for a long time in England from 2014 to 20, although he was loaned out quite a bit there. Mario Pasalic was born in Germany, and his first tournament, after a couple of times trying, was the Euro 2020. Actually, for the 3 tournaments before that, he was on the preliminary squad. For 2 of the 3. The 2 World Cups in 2014 and 18 was on the preliminary squad, but didn't make the cut. But he finally did in Euro 2020 and for the World Cup in 2022, where he was a substitute in both. Pasalic has started 5 of their 12 games since the 2022 World Cup, but the reason we have him as a definite candidate is that he subbed in for the 7 others, so always selected is Mario Pasalic. The other definite candidate is Lovro Mayer, not really a starter either. We'll get to that. Mayer is 26 years old and been with Croatia since 2017 with 29 caps and 6 goals. And he plays for Wolfsburg in Germany since 2022 and was with Reims in France before that for a couple of years. Not selected for the 2020 Euro Cup, but was a substitute in all 7 games of the 2022 World Cup, so was on the squad there. And he started 4 of their 12 games since the World Cup, was subbed in for 7 on the bench for the for 1 other. So, like Mario Pasalic, not only is he always selected, but usually subbed in, usually sees time on the field, although not usually as a starter. Okay, let's go to our possible candidate, Marco Pasalic. And he's 23 years old, been with Croatia since 2023 with 4 caps and no goals, but all of those caps are as a substitute. Marco Pasalic was born in Germany, but he's playing for Rijeka in Croatia since 2023 and was with Borussia Dortmund for a couple of years before that. Borussia Dortmund's A and B team there. Marco Pasalic got his first cap in November 2022. No, that must be November 2023, sorry. And he didn't start any of their remaining 4 games, but was subbed in for all 4 matches. So all 3 of these candidates see most of their field time as a substitute. Let's talk about the position. Now, this is one of the, really the first position where we're really seeing a lot of changes. Most of the positions we've dealt with so far have been fairly steady, the same candidate playing the position. Anyway, it was in the World Cup, attacking midfield of Vlasic in game 1, forward Kramaric in games 2 to 4, Mario Pasalic Mario Pasalic in games 5 and 6. All of those playing as a left attacking midfielder in the 4-3-3. Oh, sorry, as a left forward in the 4-3-3. And in the final game, it was Meyer playing as a right attacking midfielder. Okay, no, we are talking about the right side here. So if I said left in there, I'm sorry. Okay, so we can see we're kind of all over the place in the World Cup with different players coming into the position. Since the World Cup, Kramaric, who's coded as a forward, and Mario Pasalic rotated in the position, but near the end, Meyer played 3 of the last 4 games. So Meyer playing 3 of the last 4 games, and Pasalic one of them. So even though these weren't the 2 main players in the World Cup, now they have become that, although Kramaric sometimes there. Okay, let's move on to central attacking midfielder. This position is only used in the 4-2-3-1, so that would be just a few times over the last couple of years. We do have many players coded as attacking midfielders, but we've moved them around. So Brozovic, Meyer, and Ivanusic, all coded as attacking midfielders, but all kind of playing somewhere else on the field. So the one candidate we have who is actually playing here is Nikola Vlasic, and we have him as a likely candidate. And we also have a possible candidate in Martin Baturina. Okay, let's take a look at these players. 26 years old is Nikola Vlasic, and been with Croatia since 2017 with 55 caps and 7 goals. He plays for Torino in Italy since 2023 and was with West Ham before that. And he was selected for both of the previous tournaments. And since the 2022 World Cup has started one of their 12 games. However, he was subbed in for 6 and on the bench for 2. So just 2 matches that he was not selected for. However, he is out with an abductor injury since mid-May, and he missed the last 3 games for his club. He is expected, though, to return on May 31st. So a bit of a doubt there. I guess we can look at the friendlies in early June to see if he's back. And we'll try to cover that in our update if we do it before or after the friendly games. Okay, the possible candidate here is Martin Baturina. He is 21 years old and just with the team since 2023 with 2 caps and no goals. So of course, not part of any tournament for the team. And he plays for Dynamo Zagreb in Croatia. So he got his first cap in November 2023, didn't start any games, but was subbed in for 2 and then injured for the last 2 matches. I don't have an injury warning on him though, so I'm assuming that he has recovered from that injury. Okay, so central attacking midfielder. So just using the 4-2-3-1, so in 20% of their games. In the Cup, we saw that it was used in the last game, and it was the forward Kramaric, who we'll meet soon, that was stationed there. And he actually played the role too in 2 of the 4 times after the Cup that they used the 4-2-3-1. In the other 2 games, it was Ivanusic and Mario Pasalic. So we've seen Ivanusic as a left attacker and Pasalic as a right attacker, both of them playing centrally 1 time each. All right, let's move on to forwards. And we don't have any players coded as secondary strikers, so we go straight to kind of center forwards. And I've mentioned a few times Andre Kramaric, who is the definite candidate here. And we have Bruno Petkovic, a likely candidate. And Ante Budimir is the first of 3 possible candidates. Petar Musa and Dion Beljo. All three of them possible candidates, and we'll deal with a couple of less likely players. So possible but unlikely is Matija Frigan, and he doesn't have any caps for the national team. He's 21 years old and got his first appearance on the bench in September 2023. However, he was on the bench for 2 games and then with the under-23 team for the last 6 matches. So it looks like this tournament comes too soon for him, but we may see him in the future. He plays for Westerlo in Belgium. The other one is the player we mentioned in section 1, Marco Livaja, and we saw that he announced his retirement after some controversy on the team. So as we said, he hasn't played since March 2023. He actually announced his retirement in October 2023. All right, let's look at the candidates then. Andrej Kramaric is 33 years old, been with Croatia since 2014, 91 caps and 28 goals. Part of the squad since Euro 2016 and was a starter in both of the recent tournaments. And since the World Cup in 2022 has started 9 of their 12 games, subbed in for 1 and injured for 2. But as we saw, not always starting as a centre forward. Okay, next is our likely candidate, Bruno Petkovic. He's 29 years old and been with Croatia since 2019 with 36 caps and 11 goals. And he plays for Dinamo Zagreb in Croatia since 2019. So with them for 5 years now. He was part of both of the previous tournaments. Euro 2020 was his first tournament. He was a substitute in both of those, and he has since started 3 of their 12 games and subbed in for 4. He was injured for 1 and not selected for 3. So we have Bruno Petkovic as a likely candidate. Ante Budimir is the first of 3 possible candidates. He is 32 years old and has been with Croatia since 2020, just 19 caps and 2 goals in that time. He plays for Osasuna in Spain and was with Mallorca in Spain before that. He was also part of the last 2 tournaments as a substitute in both. But then he was off the team. Sorry, I'm a bit confused because I have him off the team for 11 months. And oh, yes, I guess that makes sense. Off the team after the World Cup and returned in November 2023. And then started 2 of their remaining 4 games, but then not selected for the last 2 matches. So kind of in and out over the past year and a half. Ante Budimir, that's why we have him as just possible here. Next, we have Petar Musa. We mentioned him in the intro as the player playing in the USA for FC Dallas. That's since 2024, so just recently. He was with Benfica for 2 years prior to that, Benfica in Portugal. He is 25 years old, 26 years old, and has been with the team since 2023 with 6 caps and no goals. So he wasn't selected for the World Cup squad in 2022, not even for the preliminary squad there. But he got his first cap in just after that. Sorry, I do have a note on him for the World Cup because one of my sources said he had been called up for a game in June 2022. But another source disagreed with that. So we'll say he got his first cap anyway in March 2023. Started 2 of their remaining 12 games there and subbed in for and was on the bench for 2. However, Musa was not selected for the last 4 matches, so it looks like moving to America didn't help his international career. Although I'm just kind of guessing those 2 might be related. Anyway, Peter Musa, a possible candidate. And finally, Dion Beljo is also new to the team. He is 22 years old, two caps since 2023, and plays for Augsburg in Germany since 2023. He got his first cap in June of 2023. He didn't start any games, but subbed in for two and was on the bench for three. But he was not selected for the last two matches there. So also a bit of a doubt cast over Belgio. And that is it for the candidates. Let's summarize the position. So in a 4-3-3 formation, this is the center forward. And in a 4-2-3-1 formation, it's the sole forward. So players in this position, like the right wing, like the right attacking position, have also been changing quite a bit. Even in the World Cup, it was Kramaric in just 3 games and Livija in 3 games also. And then Petkovic right in the middle played game 4. Those 3 players all played in the position after the Cup too, although for Livija it was only in the first game. Then Kramaric took over and then Petkovic. About halfway through, Musa started 2 games, then Budimir. But in the last 2 games, they went back to Kramaric and Petkovic again, each of those starting just once. Okay, that is it. Brings us to the end of our look at the candidates. So let's move into section 3 here, where we have any closing thoughts. We've gotten in a bit of trouble with Croatian fans for saying that the team is aging, but I gotta say, still most of the influential players are kind of still guiding the team. We have Luka Modric at 38, Perisic, who seems to be drifting off the team at 35, and a lot of players in their 30s. However, we do see some refreshment of new players coming in over the last couple of years, so we won't harp on that point. The other closing thought is that for most positions, it's very steady, the same candidates or the same players playing in the same position, so a very cohesive squad. The only positions for which that's not true is the right attacking position, right attacking midfielder or the right forward, or the center forward. Both of those kind of different players switching into those positions. Okay, let's go through and we'll just do a review of players that we are confident are going to start. So we begin with the manager, Zlatko Dalic, and we'll say that he is a starter since we don't think he'll be replaced before the Cup starts. So I'm going to highlight him in green on the YouTube graphics here. Dominik Livakovic in goal will be the starter, but we're not sure who the backup will be because it's kind of open. For defenders in central defense, I think we're confident enough to say Gvardiol and Sutalo will be the starters. The likely candidates, Erlich and Bida, both did start 3 games, but we're going to go with Gvardiol and Sutalo as the starting pairing. We're pretty confident. For left back, Sosa was the definite starter, or did start most of the games in the World Cup in 2022, but since then it has been a bit more up in the air. So we've actually seen central defender Gvardiol coming into the position, I believe. I know that he has done so for his club as well. So we can't really nominate a starter with confidence in the left back position. We've seen a few candidates come in. In the right back position, we can't either. What we can say more confidently is that it'll be a rotation between Stanisic and Juranovic, or at least it has been. So that's what we would predict going into this Cup. Defensive and central midfielders, I think they're probably going to use the familiar 4-3-3 in the cup, and so we'll see Brozovic in the centre of that, most likely, in that middle line. And we've kind of organised things according to that here. So as the left midfielder in the 4-3-3, how confident are we about Kovacic? Not confident enough to highlight him in here, but probably the starter, but we're not confident enough to do that. However, we are confident enough to say Luka Modric will be a starter as a right midfielder or defensive midfielder. Somewhere in the central midfield, we will find Luka Modric, I'm sure, even despite his age of 38. On the left attacking part of the field, so the left quadrant in the attacking end, again, not really confident enough to say, but Ivan Usic seems to have the best bid, but we do have a few players over there. What we can say with more confidence is that it doesn't look like it's going to be Ivan Perisic, who it was in the World Cup. He has kind of drifted out or off the position. So that's all we can really say about that. For right attackers, again, a lot of players have come into this position. So we do have Mario Pasalic and Lovro Mayer probably starting in the position, but we're not confident enough to say that they will be starters. So we're going to leave that one blank too. Up at the front for forwards, I am going to highlight Andrej Kramaric. He might not necessarily start as the centre forward, but he has started in other positions too. So he's usually on the field, and we're confident enough to say that he'll be a starter. All right, that is our review of the starters. And now let us go to a review of injuries. Not too bad on Croatia compared to some other teams we've looked at, but we do have Niko Vlasic out with an abductor injury. As we said in the main media cast, he missed the last 3 games for his club. So we don't know how his recovery is coming along. He is expected to return on May 31st, but then he won't have a lot of opportunity to get back into fitness, into game fitness. 2 friendlies, though, we're looking at those friendlies to see if he makes his return there. We did have him as a likely candidate, but of course that depends on injuries. All right, well, we'll just finish with a quick preview of part 2. So when the final rosters are published, we're going to compare them with what we've talked about here, and especially point out any notable non-selections, any surprise inclusions, including new players, and then any further updates on injuries. Hopefully we'll have more to say about Nikola Vlasic. Okay, thank you for listening, and we hope that kind of helps you enjoy the upcoming Euro Cup. We would like to thank Mike Tripak, Big Sound Music, and Pixabay for the wonderful background music called Dance 90s accompanying this media cast.